Welcome to the Practicing Drummer podcast. My name is Craig, and in this episode, I've got a conversation with Steven Crammer from March of 2026. Steven is a very busy drummer living in Brooklyn. Prepping for this interview, I listened a lot to his own projects, Nortonk and Prawntail, which we talk about a lot in the episode, but he's also a very active sideman, playing with people like Max Light, Cecil Alexander, Matt Pavolka, Dobbin Ryu, Hannah Marks, and the list goes on. As always, I'll link to everything in the show notes and on the blog at practicingdrummer.com. And with that, let's get right into it with Steven Crammer. Hey, Steven, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me on. Look forward to talking to you.
Oh, yeah, same. And before we get going, I want to thank you for sending me those emails full of links and whatnot to all the different projects you wanted me to check out as I was prepping for this. And then somehow the drummer Ted Poor came up as well, and I found out that you're a big fan. And you sent me a bunch of links to his playing as well, which is super awesome because he's not a drummer I've really checked out too much. So I've really been enjoying checking out his playing, and definitely is somebody I'm going to keep checking out. But I'm curious, when did you get into Ted's playing?
I think I first heard Ted on record when I was 18, something like that. I actually don't remember what the first recording was, but I then very shortly after that saw him at the now unfortunately defunct Cornelia Street Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Which I used to go to all the time when I was about 18, 19, 20. When it was still around. And I saw him play there many times with a bunch of different projects. He played with Lauren Stillman a lot, who's a saxophone player that I love. I used to see them play a lot. I saw his own band play. He had this quartet, like a cordless quartet that was a tribute to Our Man in Jazz.
Oh, cool.
That played at the Gallery once. I saw them. I saw him play with Matt Pavolka. Bunch of different bands.
Did you ever talk to him or study with him or anything like that?
Never studied with him, but I did speak with him a few times just, after a gig.
Mm-hmm.
And then some very short email correspondences, like when I was in college, just asking questions about some of his tunes
cool.
Just because he moved to Seattle. I don't know what year it was, but it was not that long after I had been going to see him. So it was a bit disappointing for me because I was like really into his playing, and then he moved to Seattle.
Yeah.
And then since he's moved to Seattle, I've probably only seen him live about 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years.
Oh, wow. Do you remember anything you got from him during the course of emailing him that helped your playing or even your writing?
Yeah, I don't know if I really asked him things that pointedly or specific. I think it was more just like, hey, I'd love to see what this tune looks like on paper because it's interesting and I don't know anything that sounds like that. Or
yeah.
Or just asking him if he's going to be around.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think back then he wasn't super active on social media or anything.
Oh, sure. And hearing you talk about the Cornelia Street Cafe reminds me that I think that's the first place that I ever saw Dan Weiss play, and it was a really cool club. And you studied with Dan for a little while, right?
I did for like a year in my undergrad.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and I definitely want to dive into that later. But anyway, just hearing about the Cornelia Street Cafe just had me reminiscing about that a little bit. So, man, yeah, I miss that place.
I miss it too. I actually never got to play there.
Oh,
but
really?
I don't know what it was. I probably could have had the opportunity to play there, but somehow it just didn't work out that way. But I saw so much music there. I would say I saw more music there than anywhere else during that period, like 2012 to 2015, maybe.
Do you remember other drummers that you were kind of obsessed with during that time?
Oh, I saw so many. I saw Gerald Cleaver play there. I saw Tom Rainey. I saw Tyshawn Sorey play there. I saw Marcus play there. Yeah, so many people.
Oh, yeah, Gerald Cleaver. I think I read somewhere in some liner notes or something, you mentioned him, and I'll be honest, I'd never heard of him before, but I looked up some clips, and my gosh, just amazing. I'm excited to dig into him a little bit more.
Yeah, Gerald is incredible. Also does not live in New York anymore, which is,
oh, okay.
Okay. A lot of drummers that I really love have over time, which is natural, but over time, people have spread out. But Gerald's not super active online that I'm aware of, and he is kind of like a musician's drummer to some degree. Like drummers don't obsess over him necessarily. He's not the flashiest drummer, and but he's just got an incredible sound. His ears are really special, and he plays with a lot of artists that I like. So when I was in college, Craig Taborn's trio record called Chance was like such an impactful record for me and a lot of my peers.
Oh, and he's
And
on that.
yeah, Gerald is
Oh,
on that
okay.
with Thomas Morgan.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll have to go back and check that out. And I may hit you up later for more recommendations too.
Sure.
Okay, well, I suppose we should jump in and talk about your playing, since that's why we're here and why I wanted to talk to you. I know you started around 6 years old. You grew up in Pennsylvania. So can you tell me kind of briefly how you started playing and what your early obsessions were?
I'm not sure I know the exact catalyst for why I started, but the earliest thing I can remember is that my dad had one of those old Remo practice pads with the plastic rim, and it was sitting in some cabinet or something in our basement.
Was he a drummer?
And he was not. He's an electric bass player.
Oh,
but
cool.
He played in one band of his friends that already had a bass player, and he learned how to play some basic drums for one band in high school.
Oh, okay.
And then I think he played in the marching band for 1 or 2 years in the percussion section, because there was there's no bass in the marching band. So he knew some basic things, and I think I found this pad and was messing around with it. I think that's what happened. And then he just started showing me some little things that he could remember. And I think that I was about 5 when that happened.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then when I turned 6, my parents bought me like a junior drum set.
Okay.
And I took to it pretty much immediately. That just became my hobby.
So did you just sit down and start messing around? Did he show you beats? Were there lessons?
So he showed me like my first beat or two, some basic stuff. And I was already really into music. Like, my dad's a big music listener, so
okay,
I was listening a lot to music.
What kind of stuff was he into? Or at least what was he into that you were into?
Well, at first I was just into whatever he was into when I was really young. It was just whatever he was playing in the car. My dad is a huge Rush fan.
Oh, right.
So that was one of the first things I got really into, was Rush. But he's also a big fan of just like, I guess what you would call classic rock at this point. So AC/DC, something like Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
But he also loves the Talking Heads. He liked Duran Duran. So kind of, all sorts of stuff. But he also had a bunch of binders at home that had probably hundreds of CDs in them. And he would just buy stuff that he didn't even necessarily know or listen to. So he had some jazz stuff. He had country music. He had classical music, all sorts of different stuff that he might not have even been listening to, but he just liked buying and having these different things to put on.
I know he took you to see Rush. I don't know that, but I heard in an interview that he took you to see Rush when you were around 8 or so, and that was pretty life-changing for you. Did you go through a big Neil phase at that point?
Oh, of course. The second song I ever learned how to play on drums was Tom Sawyer.
Oh, nice.
The first song I learned was Wipeout.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and then I learned how to play Tom Sawyer when I was still 6 years old when I was doing both of those. And then when I turned 8, my parents took me to a local music store to actually get formal lessons from his name is Scott Kelly. He was just a local drummer in Allentown, and we drove to a music store that doesn't exist anymore called Dave Phillips Music, and he was one of the teachers there, and I took lessons with him for probably like 2 or 3 years.
And what was that like? Were you getting into jazz music yet, or was it more about rock and rudiments and stuff like that?
He was a pretty thorough teacher in a way. I went through the Haskell Haar book, if you know the Haskell Haar snare drum book.
Yeah.
So that was the first like rudimental book that I dealt with. We went through that. I was pretty quick at learning how to read and things like that. I had already started reading a little bit, I think, before I even started taking lessons, just on my own.
Oh, wow.
And then he really got me, understanding how to read better. So we did that. We also went through, I'm trying to remember the name of the book. The Carmine book.
Oh, like Realistic Rock is the famous one?
Yeah, Realistic Rock. Yeah.
Okay.
So we went through that. And then we also he had me go through the Jim Chapin book.
Oh, yeah.
So I was, even though the Jim Chapin book is not really a jazz book, it's a coordination book using a jazz ride pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That at least exposed me to something about the way the drums play in that music, even if I didn't know anything about it.
Oh, sure. Do you remember when you were first introduced to jazz music?
I don't know when I was first introduced to jazz, to be honest. It was, I remember my dad having a few random recordings. We had like some compilation of like best of the swing era,
Okay.
something like that. And then my dad, I still have the CD somewhere in my apartment, but it's called Blues Caravan. And it's a Buddy Rich sextet record from, I think, the early 60s. And so we had that around the house too. And I liked that record. And he might have had, like Time Out and Kind of Blue, but I
Sure.
wasn't really listening to them. They were just things that I might have heard.
Oh, okay. And so what were you obsessed with in junior high school then?
Mostly, well, there's two things. So there was the thing I was listening to in my free time,
Uh-huh.
which is mostly like metal, progressive rock. I was really into thrash, so I loved Metallica,
Yeah.
Megadeth,
Yep.
things like that.
Yep.
But I also loved King Crimson and Pink Floyd and Genesis. But then I actually started working as a drummer at about 12 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the story is kind of complicated, but there's a local dinner theater that is near where I grew up. It was originally in Slatington, Pennsylvania, which is about 15 minutes north of where I'm from. And then it ended up being in Center City, Allentown, which is about 12 minutes south of where I'm from. So
Okay.
they moved locations, but it was originally like a country and Western dinner theater.
Oh, interesting.
And so I started playing with them at 12 years old on like just one-offs. And then as I got older, I started playing weekends with them and then evenings and weekends with them. And I did that up until I was about 20 years old.
So playing country music?
Well, the first show I did with them was a country themed show, but then they also started doing, I think they always did it, but I started getting involved with doing musical theater stuff there as well. So I did Singing in the Rain. We did like a Johnny Cash musical. I did an Elvis musical, John Denver musical. I did their Christmas shows. And yeah, I did that on and off from the time I was 12 till the time I was about 20 years old.
Oh, wow. So that's a lot of exposure to different music and to reading, too.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I know you had some jazz around the house, but I always assumed you had been playing jazz music since you were young, since you are still pretty young and are hanging at a really high level with a lot of the modern music that you're playing now. So when did you first get into listening to jazz that maybe wasn't stuff that was in your dad's collection, and what were some of those records?
In high school, I got into, I think, both sort of, I don't love the term straight ahead, but I'm going to use that term as a description. Some straight ahead stuff and also fusion kind of simultaneously. And I think because I was into progressive rock and metal, that there's like a pipeline to fusion through that. So I was introduced, I don't remember if a friend gave it to me or a teacher, but I got into Mahavishnu and Billy Cobham at 15 or something like that. And then I heard Weather Report. I don't remember if I had heard Headhunters back then, but just got into some different fusion, Lifetime a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the jazz records, I was just recommended. I took a lesson actually with John Riley when I was like 17 or 15, maybe 15 or 16. Just one lesson with him.
How did that come about?
My dad talked to my teacher at the time, and they were just like, he should try taking lessons with some different people for different like he had no expertise in jazz, so just to see if it was something I was interested in. And John lived at the time like up the Hudson. It was like a two some hour drive from my place. We went on a weekend. He drove me up there and I took a lesson with John, and John just kind of said, you should get these records, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper for me.
Oh, nice.
And one of the records he wrote down was Milestones. So I bought Milestones. And then I bought a couple other records, not that he recommended, but I think Blue Train I bought, and I also bought The Shape of Jazz to Come.
Oh, okay.
And those were some records that I had really early that had a big impact on me. But even at that time, it was not the primary style I was playing. It was sort of like one of these things where it was in the background. I was doing it a little bit. I played in the school jazz band. I did all-state jazz in high school. So I was doing it a bit, but it wasn't my primary focus. And then it was sort of like as I was exiting high school, it became more and more the focus.
And were John's books out yet when you were studying with him or when you took that lesson?
Yeah, I think I had already gone through, or like gone, whatever it means to go through a book.
Yeah.
But I went through the Art of Bebop, or
Okay.
the Art of Bop Drumming, first
Uh-huh.
one. And then he recommended I get what is the name of that book? The third book that he made, the one that's like a compilation of all of his articles
Oh,
from.
yeah. I can't remember the name of that right now, but yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes. I'm sure everybody knows what they are.
It's a
Yeah.
good book. Yeah. It's a little bit more advanced and it's a little less like point A to point B. It's a bit more all over the place,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's not more linear. Like the other books are a little more linear.
yeah, exactly.
So it was just the one lesson with him then, huh?
Just one lesson. I mean, I studied with John later then, and I went to grad school at Manhattan School of Music.
Yeah, okay. Let's jump to college then. So you went to William Patterson,
I did.
big jazz school.
Big jazz school.
So when you decided to go to William Patterson, had you already decided that you wanted to be a jazz drummer, or were you still pretty obsessed with fusion at that point and not too deep in?
Well, we're actually, I think the thing is we're skipping a very weird but specific period of my life, which is right after high school,
Oh,
before college, which is that I did not go straight to college.
oh, wow. Okay.
I moved to New York City at 18 and I started taking lessons and classes as part of this program at the Drummers Collective in New York City,
Okay.
which doesn't really exist anymore. But at the time, it was, think about it like a drum focused school.
Yeah.
And I went there because I knew I wanted to live in New York and I wanted to play music in New York, but I was kind of torn between what I wanted to do exactly. So I moved to the city at 18. I started taking lessons and some classes there. And very quickly, I started going out to see a lot of music and just through teachers, especially my primary teacher there, Peter Retzloff, an amazing teacher. And he was very encouraging. He could tell that I was interested in jazz. And I think he could also tell that I was maybe a little bit hesitant to go for it because I wasn't sure that it was a viable career path, basically, or that I wasn't sure if it made sense for me to do that and I should just do something else.
So what were you working on at Drummers Collective? Because I definitely remember that when I was growing up, it was sort of seen as almost an incubator for fusion drumming.
So there definitely was still a lot of that there. And I did study with some of the people that are more in that vein. I didn't study with Kim Plainfield, who at the time was like the older guy who was really like the fusion teacher there. I didn't actually get to study with him at all, but I studied a bit with Marko Djordjevic, if you know who that is.
Yeah.
Mostly studying odd meter. I took some lessons with him and he ran this little like small class called odd meters there that I took.
Okay.
But I spent most of my time there with Peter and we mostly worked on jazz.
And were you playing in the city at that time too, or were you solely living there sort of as a student of the Drummers Collective?
I was definitely there mostly just to study, but I did play a little bit, but nothing serious, just like little things. And I wasn't even really in the scene or like trying to be in the jazz scene or anything. I was just trying to get my own stuff together.
How did you go from Drummers Collective to deciding that you wanted to go to William Patterson?
I think it was at the encouragement of Peter, basically.
Oh, okay.
I was always skeptical of going to college in general because no one in my family went to college. So neither of my parents are college educated. My sister didn't go to college. So I think I was skeptical of that path. But then after speaking to Peter, who got his master's at Manhattan School of Music and, was a working musician in New York, he encouraged me to go. He thought I would benefit from it, but he also thought it was a good way to just like dip your toes into the scene. There is some aspect of networking involved too, just like meeting peers that are of similar age.
Yeah.
Which is harder to do if you're just in the city and you don't know anyone.
Right. And did you know you wanted to be a professional musician at that point?
I knew I wanted to be a professional musician from the time I was probably about 7.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I ever seriously considered any other career path.
Okay, that should have been obvious to me, but I guess the reason I asked is because, you moved to New York, not because you wanted to go there to start playing, but it was just to further your study, and you kind of talked about just the kind of dipping your toes into the jazz water a little bit. And so when you got to William Patterson, what was that like when you got there? Was it overwhelming? I talked to Hank Allen Barfield last year, and he said that when he got to William Patterson, seeing you play was his, oh shit, I need to practice a lot harder moment. And so I'm wondering if you had anything like that when you, maybe even at Drummers Collective or at William Patterson.
So at William Patterson, I would say my experience was a little bit different because I was a bit older.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So I started 2 years late because I spent basically a year in the city at the collective, and then I went home for a year, or almost a year, because I needed to make some money.
Yeah.
Before going to college.
Uh-huh.
So I was 20 instead of 18 when I started at William Patterson.
Okay.
And that puts me at the same age as someone who's a junior there.
Right.
I think the thing that was different for me is that like I came across more people who did grow up playing jazz who were 10 or something or 9 years old when they started playing jazz. So there was maybe a little bit of a experience or knowledge gap in terms of just like them knowing a million records and them having seen whoever when they were in high school. And like I hadn't seen this person play yet, or I hadn't. But in terms, I felt like I had the other thing really down, which was that I could play the instrument well. So it was more like a knowledge problem than a technical one.
Speaking of technique, before we move on too much, another thing that Hank wanted me to ask you about was your hand technique and your snare drum technique. Did you work on hands a ton in high school, or did that just come through your fusion and prog rock playing that you got all of that together so well?
No, I can't claim to just have been a hardcore practicer as young. It was partially a byproduct of just like some opportunities I had through my school. I started young, which is one thing, but also I was in concert band, marching band, wind ensemble, percussion ensemble, all from the time I was like 12.
Oh, okay.
I was playing on the snare drum line in the high school marching band when I was 12 years old.
Oh, wow. High school at 12?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did it for 3 years. In fact, I only did it until I was a freshman in high school. I did it in 7th grade, 8th grade, and my freshman year of high school.
Okay. That kind of puts some pieces together for me. That'll get your hands together quick.
So I had a lot of like rudimental vocabulary and knowledge from the time that I was very young.
Okay.
And also because my first teacher at the music store, one of the first things I mentioned I did was go through the Haskell Harr book.
Yeah.
So I had rudiments in my hands from the time I was about 8 years old. And then after that, I've always been interested in keeping my hands together. So I've always tried to keep challenging myself in that regard over the years, even if I'm not as diligent about it now as a professional than I was when I was 16 or something.
Yeah, so what did that look like for you? Were you just finding different snare drum books to go through, or?
Yeah, I mean, anything. Old books like the Pratt book or the Wilcoxon books, or I remember I used to have this Blue Devils drum corps book.
Oh, yeah.
That I don't even know if it's in print anymore, but I have a copy of it. It's like falling apart.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The Master Studies book is the other one that I've spent a lot of time in.
And how did you work on that stuff, or how would you suggest now that people work on that stuff? Because I have heard you talk about this idea of having technique, but making sure your technique is in service of ideas, and it is so easy. I know, at least for myself, it's so easy to work through snare drum books with a metronome on a pad. And then, maybe the stuff doesn't really translate when you get to the kit. So how did you work on this stuff so that it would improve your drum set playing?
Well, I'm sure when I was young, it was just technique for technique's sake because I had no musical context to plug it in.
Uh-huh.
But, most musical cultures, there isn't really like exercises in the same way that we work on exercise. It's like everything that is an exercise is a foundational piece of music or something that can be used in a musical context. And you isolate those things and then you piece them together with more basic elements. And I think when it comes to snare drum stuff, like you can work on fundamentals isolated and separate, but then if you're going to go play through rudimental things like the Wilcoxon book or the Pratt book, if all you ever do with it is just play down the exercise, well, you're learning something, I guess, but you're not learning how to use any of that information. And I think what I would encourage people to do is then, once you can play something, take things and put them in context somehow. Maybe you play some time and you trade with yourself. You find an idea in the Wilcoxon solo that you like, one bar or two beats, and loop it. See if you can play it different ways. See if you can start it in a different place. See if you can orchestrate it. Maybe you put the accents on the floor tom. Maybe you put an accent on the cymbal.
Sure. And was this stuff that you were doing and challenging yourself with, or did this come from teachers?
It's a combination of all of those. Some of them were things that teachers recommended I do, and then other things were just byproducts of discovering it or getting bored and wanting to do something else with it. Or
Okay, and we will get back to some technique stuff, but I don't want to stray too far from William Patterson. And I'm curious if you can articulate how your time at William Patterson changed. Well, maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but how maybe it guided you in a different direction than you were going at Drummers Collective?
Yeah, well, I mean, the big difference was that it was an actual jazz school. So I was surrounded by people who wanted to play jazz.
Yeah.
But I will say I have a different relationship with my time at William Patterson now than I probably did at the time. I think back more fondly of it than I did maybe when I was there at the time, because it's sometimes hard when you're grinding and you're in the moment. It's easier to just focus on things that aren't going the way you want or whatever. But I think at the time when I was there, William Patterson has a reputation for being like a pretty capital J jazz, relatively straight ahead school.
Right.
And I was into a lot of music when I got there. So I love straight ahead. I love to swing, but I also love to free improvise. I like to play original music. And there was just less of some of those other things happening there. And so I spent a lot of time like carving out spaces for those things.
Oh, like creating your own groups or?
Yeah, or trying to find a couple students that were into those other things that we could try some other stuff. Because in most of my combos and whatever, we were focused on the same things that everybody else is focused on.
One thing that's coming to my mind that, and this is back to technique maybe a little bit, you came from playing, you said thrash and metal and prog rock, but now you have such incredible dynamics and your touch is so good. Was that a challenge for you to go from a lot of the heavy hitting stuff to playing so dynamically now?
I'm not sure that was something I was thinking about so proactively while it was happening. It was just like sort of an arc.
Okay.
Where the music I was playing just kept demanding more and more attention to detail.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah, the detail. Yeah.
And I think it just shifted that way. And now I have the opposite problem, which is the endurance problem. Like if I'm playing a gig where I have to hit kind of hard, I'm just like, wow, I never do this anymore.
Oh, sure,
like,
sure.
I don't hit this hard for this long, like rarely ever.
Yeah. Did you, was there anything you had to unlearn from your heavier playing? Like any habits? I know sometimes, like for me, I was into metal a lot too as a kid. Same deal, Metallica, Iron Maiden, Megadeth, blah, blah, blah. And so sometimes even still, I struggle with, growing up learning drum parts. And sometimes, especially like if I'm playing a time signature I'm not super familiar with, I'll just lock into a part, that kind of becomes the pattern. Is there anything like that you had to unlearn or that you have struggled with?
That specific thing was not an issue because I think I was always, even when I was really into metal, I actually always had a bit of a tendency to want to make it my own anyways. So I always tweaked parts and never really wanted to play exactly just what I was hearing. But the big thing for me was that when I first started playing jazz, I was still playing match grip primarily.
Oh, yeah.
And I just played rim shots most of the time.
Oh, okay.
And it's funny because now in contemporary jazz drumming, that actually is the norm. is to play like a quiet rim shot as like your primary snare drum stroke. But one of the reasons that I switched primarily to traditional grip when I was about 18, I think, was that I wanted to get away from prior habits like that, just
Yeah.
as like almost like a clean slate.
Oh, interesting.
Because I played traditional grip from the time I was like 11 or 12 years old. So I didn't have to learn how to play traditional grip. It was just a matter of being like, okay, now this is the primary grip I play. It's easier for me to hear the balance of sound that I need to play jazz when I'm using this grip. It makes me think differently, and it definitely makes me less likely to want to smack a rim shot all the time.
Oh, sure. And how about brush playing? I know I found my playing got much better when I committed to traditional grip.
I learned brushes both ways, actually.
Oh, you did?
I learned how to
Okay.
play. Yeah, I learned how to play match grip brushes and traditional because I learned brushes. I mean, I knew how to play brushes a little bit, but when I was at the collective, Peter is a great brush player. And we spent a lot of time working on brushes. And I was playing all match grip brushes with him
Oh, wow.
because I was still playing match grip for the most part at that time. And then I switched to traditional. And then he showed me like enough things traditional that I had a starting point. And then I just worked on the same things that I was working on match grip with traditional. And it
Okay.
came easier actually for me.
How about sweeping direction? I know for me, I've kind of gone back and forth, and I think I've talked to some people and even probably mentioned it on the podcast here that I had a pretty strong opinion about counterclockwise being better, but now I just kind of do whatever feels better at different tempos.
I don't have a strong opinion, meaning I think there's like some objective standard by which we should evaluate it. But I think it's good to have options.
Yeah.
I would say 80% of the time I sweep in a straight line. So I actually kind of just don't have to worry about that,
There you go.
which direction. But if I am sweeping in a circle, I do tend to sweep clockwise instead of, I know a lot of people like counterclockwise because you get more pressure on 2 and 4, but I kind of make up for that by the fact that I sweep straight when I want more pressure.
Oh, okay.
And it just depends. I mean, historically, drummers do both. I mean, there's plenty of examples of drummers of the past doing either one.
Yeah.
There's not like, to me, there's not a best. It's just like, do you make the one that you choose work well?
Yeah, sure. That's fair. So I kind of want to get back to talking about William Patterson, but more specifically about you creating the kind of opportunities you wanted for yourself at the school. Because I know that you still play with people that you met at school. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your teacher, Kevin Norton, and how you formed the group that eventually became named after him, or his email handle anyway, Nortonk.
I don't actually remember how I met him at the school. It was probably through the ear training class because he taught one of the ear training classes. The reason that I was attracted to him initially is because he was kind of the only faculty member who would talk about sort of like left of center music, more avant-garde. He played with Anthony Braxton a bit.
Oh, okay.
And he knows a lot of different stuff. He was kind of part of like the law or like the downtown scene. And so he knew a lot about improvised music and contemporary composition and contemporary classical music and all sorts of stuff, and was a prolific composer. So I started spending time around him. And then when the band formed, the band actually started as like an ensemble that was assembled at the school.
Oh, okay.
I got a couple friends that I liked playing with who were down to play different stuff. And I think it originally started as more like a playing kind of ornette, cordless quartet kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then working with Kevin, he really encouraged us to compose or try playing a broader array of things, different kinds of repertoire, different kinds of improvised settings. And yeah, it kind of just went from there. He was very supportive of us doing something like that. And I think he was really into it because at the time there wasn't much of that happening at the school.
So did you all start writing then while you were in school? And how was that? What was that process like? Like, would one of you bring in a tune, or was it more of collective?
All 4 of us brought in music.
Okay.
Some people were faster writers or wrote more stuff than others, but all 4 of us brought in music for the band.
Including you, right?
Including me.
So does that mean that you also play piano, or?
I play what I would call composer's piano.
Oh, okay, sure, sure. And were you guys playing? Were you doing gigs or anything while you were in school?
A little bit, but not a ton. I mean, we were, because that band lasted, I think, like 2 years or something in the school, or a year and a half at school.
And did you record the album while you were still in school?
No, I recorded the album when I was in grad school.
Oh, okay, okay. And is that band still active?
It's not active, mostly just because of uh, we don't all live in New York anymore.
Oh,
So
okay,
it kind
okay.
of just for practical reasons, it just can't really.
Yeah.
And Gideon, who's the saxophone player, and I are the only two that live in the city. And we both just have too many things on our plate that are not that project. He has his own band, which I play in, and I have a piano trio and other
Yeah.
projects that I'm focused on.
Okay, okay. Yeah, it's such a great album. I'd urge people to go check it out. And there's some good YouTube videos too of your album release party, which is very cool. That leads to this is kind of jumping all over, and I guess isn't going to be a linear interview. But I was rewatching that Nortonk performance last night, and one of the things that I was really fascinated with was the long drum solo you took on, I think it was the tune Cherry. It was so good. Just, I don't, have a hard time articulating what I loved about it, but just your development of dynamics and melodic content and density was just so impressive to me. So I was trying to think of what I could ask you other than just sort of fawning over you for how great it was. It made me wonder if you practiced long form soloing much, or if that just came from gig experience and playing experience, because it was so well crafted and it's such a hard thing to do and to do well. You can see a lot of drummers, blow chops for a bunch of minutes.
Yeah.
But to actually play something with such good musical content is not trivial. Can you talk about your approach to longer soloing and how you developed that skill?
So there's a few things, but one of those things is that I'm just fundamentally attracted more to that as a fan of music. Like if I'm going to listen to a drum solo, I want to hear content, but I want to hear content with shape. I want to hear content with good phrasing. I want to hear melodic ideas or syncopations that are interesting or whatever. I'm not that interested in just hearing a bunch of like drum shit
Yeah, yeah,
strung
yeah.
together unless it's done with that other thing as the guiding principle. And a lot of my favorite drummers are great at doing that. I mean, I always think of Ed Blackwell, who is one of my biggest heroes, and he is so good at just building on these little things and having such a center to what it is that he's going for at all times. But Tony is also great. If you ever listen to the open drum solos of Tony, it makes me think of the solo from I think it's Spring. I think it's called Echo. Takes an amazing solo on that. And then also he takes this kind of extended solo on the last track on Empyrean Isles called The Egg.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And there's this whole section where he's playing with one stick and one brush, and that had a big influence on me. So there's things like that. Ted is also another person that I think of who just takes like incredibly musical, interesting solos that are not about showing off how much he can play the instrument.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But in terms of working on it, I don't know if I actually sat down and was that focused on like, how can I practice a long form solo? But I think it is a byproduct of practicing a lot of things in a like motivic and phrase sense.
Sure. Yeah, kind of like what you were talking about with like the Wilcoxon book and taking a phrase and applying it and displacing it and
Exactly. So something I do all the time in the practice room, and it's like as I've gotten older, it's become more and more fundamental to the way I practice, is that often I will sit down and sort of play something for a minute, just kind of mess around. And if something trips me up or something catches my ear that I like, I will then just sit with that thing and sort of endlessly come up with variations and motivic ideas on that thing. Like, okay, what does it sound like if I replace this thing with the bass drum? What does it sound like if I leave this gap? What does it sound like if I change the subdivision? What does it sound like if I reorchestrate this? And then connecting these things, trying to do it in real time, not stopping. It just allows you to then understand how theme and variation works, and to be able to do that in real time. When I actually take a solo, then I can just follow my own thread. What did I just play? How can I develop this thing that I played or connect it to something, instead of just being like, here's a lick, here's a crazy fast thing, here's another lick.
Right. Well, yeah. Anyway, very, very impressive. So I'll link to that, and I'll try to put a timestamp on the link too in the show notes, because it was just so wonderful. And I mean, it's something that I like with that group, and then your current group, Prawntail, is just how organic the music is and feels, even though it's very complex. You shared some charts with me, and tough stuff to look at and to read, to try to read down. And I'm curious if you can talk about Prawntail a little bit. I'm wondering if you can articulate the difference between Nortonk and Prawntail, because I sort of consider them in the same kind of category, but they're very different. Nortonk is a chordless quartet with bass drums, trumpet, and sax, and then Prawntail is a piano trio. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how your approach is different in each group? And then, well, yeah, can we just start there with you talking about your approach to the different groups?
To be honest, I don't know if there's really like a difference of approach. It's more like I'm just playing the way that I would like to play with that set of people.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's maybe was the wrong way to ask it, but
no, but it can be hard to articulate, because I will say I don't think that either of those bands is attempting to have like some kind of overarching philosophy or concept that is like rigid, because with my current band, with Prawntail, the trio, like we like to play things that are open and loose, but we also like to play things that are really specific and have a lot of ensemble things. But we also like to swing. We like to, we kind of like to do whatever. It's not really, it's more just like whatever we're into is fair game. And we're going to play the way that we play together, regardless of what the context is.
How do you all view the tunes gig to gig? Are you like honoring the original version, the chart, or is it?
No.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to get, I guess I know the answer is no, because it's just so, like I said, it's so fluid and organic. So I'm kind of curious how you treat, because they all do have charts, they're all written tunes.
Yeah. I would say gig to gig, we have various ways that are sort of understood by us that we can navigate any given piece. But I think we played enough together, and especially in a piano trio context, maybe more than any other, there's just this level of like being able to dial in to each other that we can spontaneously rearrange something kind of whenever we want. And we all know the music very well.
Sure.
Like, I think most of us are off book for most of the music. So if we start playing a tune and somehow something happens and we decide that we're just going to start playing another tune in the middle of it, that happens, and nobody's going to blink. Or a different tempo, or we play it kind of free instead of playing through the form. Any of those things could happen.
And another thing that I was thinking about with this group specifically is wondering what your process of getting into the headspace pre-gig is. I don't, because I've watched enough videos of you, and the videos at Smalls. I've watched with you playing with Hannah Marks a few times, different videos, Smalls, and a couple other gigs, and that music is so great too. And I know you're on her album that's coming out later this year.
Yes.
So I'll look forward to that. So I was watching one of the Smalls gigs, and I kind of saw you setting up your cymbals and warming up just a little bit, but not doing a lot of physical warm-up. So I'm kind of curious what you do to get into the headspace for these gigs that are so, complex, but also have to be very organic, and you have to be very present.
I'm not like I don't have a hardcore routine before gigs. I don't have like a very specific warm up or anything like that. So in terms of physical stuff, I just want to make sure that I feel somewhat warm. Like, have I touched sticks that day?
Hmm.
Have I gotten some time in on the instrument? As long as that happens, I'm cool. I'll feel good.
Okay.
Um, and in terms of being in the right headspace, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of always ready. It's just like, as long as I'm not overly tired,
Sure.
I should be ready to go. And part of being a professional and working a lot in this city is just like, you don't get to have ideal circumstances.
That's
You
fair.
just you need to produce when you're asked to produce. And regardless of how, I might have barely slept because I had a late gig and I had to teach in the morning, or had to go to a rehearsal and then go straight to a gig. And who knows, I might not have even gotten to look at the music very much because of, for whatever reason. But it's like, nobody cares that that those things are true. They expect you to show up and deliver. So I think as long as I'm aware of that, like, I'm here to do a job. I'm here to do the best that I can do, and nobody cares about how I'm feeling or
Sure, sure. Yeah, that
so,
makes sense. And you're immersed in it. You're playing almost daily, it seems.
yeah, you just get used to doing it every day.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
lifestyle.
yeah, for sure. What about recordings? Do you have a different attitude or different prep that you do for recordings versus gigs? Or even
Um,
Prawntail? Maybe we can just put this in the context of the group Prawntail, right? So when you gig, I know it can be very open and can go wherever. What was the process much different for the recording versus the gigs?
so I would say it was a little bit different.
Okay.
And it was a little bit different for very practical reasons. We had certain constraints that we would not put on ourselves in the same way as when we play a live gig.
Mm.
So the tune starts and the tune ends is one of the constraints that was on us in the studio. When we play live, sometimes we just transition into another tune,
Oh,
or
sure,
we
sure.
don't finish the tune even. So in the studio, we were like, no, we want individual tracks. We want it
Yes.
to be like a good album listening experience. It's not meant to be a live record. And then we did have more clear ideas, at least initially, about how we were going to arrange something. But even that was not always the case in the studio, because sometimes we cut a first take and we said, that was cool. We did that arrangement. Let's cut another take, but let's do something different.
Mm.
And sometimes we either had a spoken arrangement that we came up with on the spot, or we just said, let's see what happens.
Oh, okay. Okay. The album sounds great. Just sonically, too. The album is amazing. And
Thanks.
so does the Nortonk record, too. I'm kind of bummed that that group isn't active anymore. I'd like to see how you all develop, but that's how it goes.
Yeah,
You're all
unfortunately.
busy.
Yeah.
Oh, so you mentioned Blackwell, and I want to go back there a little bit and maybe kind of get into how you deal with different drummers. So how did you get into Blackwell? And curious what a few of your favorite Blackwell records are and what doing a deep dive into Blackwell meant for you. Did it mean transcribing or just obsessive listening, or how did you get Blackwell into your playing?
So I think the first Blackwell I heard was the Ornette record, This Is Our Music, which is the
Right.
first one where he plays with the quartet.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think that's maybe my favorite record that he's on. But that's the one that got me into his playing. And I think I just loved how singular he sounded immediately. There's something interesting about the context that you hear his playing in with Ornette, where it's in some ways he's playing the straight man. Everyone else is kind of doing all of these things, and he is like just cooking. His time is incredible. It's super swinging. But then when you start listening more closely and you start hearing how he accompanies and how he occasionally leaves the cymbal and plays a little cadence on the drums,
Mm.
those are things that I just had not really heard a lot of other drummers in a context like that do.
Well, yeah, I don't think many people had
Yeah.
at that time, especially.
So that was something that caught my ear. And I've always just loved, I guess I've always loved that sort of like use of the full instrument.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of jazz drummers, you just don't hear that in general. Like, you don't hear the use of the toms as so fundamental to the relationship to the instrument. It's more like an extension of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
instrument. So a lot of people play a lot of snare drum vocabulary, and then they will reach out to the tom for an accent or just a small excursion.
Yeah.
But the way that Ed comps often is that, like, there'll be large portions where the rack tom is heard almost as much as the snare drum, or even when he's playing these little cadences, it's like all around the drum. It's the two toms and the snare drum in conversation with each other in this very like layered way.
Yeah.
I've just been attracted to that.
Did you transcribe a lot of Blackwell or hear it and then try to emulate what you were hearing?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, transcription is sort of the second thing.
Okay.
I have written down solos by many drummers in the past, but that's not really, I think the older I've gotten, actually, the more I think of that as like documentation for my archives or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not actually that useful as as something for my playing. It's more useful as like a knowledge thing. But that's the stuff that doesn't seep into your playing in the same way. The stuff that really seeps into your playing tends to be the stuff that you learn by ear
Yeah.
and then you reproduce.
Yeah, I've recently been doing that a little bit more too, hearing say a Philly Joe solo and thinking to myself, "Oh, I need to learn that."
Yeah.
But then realizing that, oh no, I'm really attracted to these 6 beats. And then through learning by ear, feeling it out on the kit, it really gets into your playing a lot more than if I would have spent months memorizing the whole solo.
Yeah, it sort of relates to something you mentioned earlier, which is that we were talking about earlier. If you learn something by ear too, and you maybe don't even understand it, you can stumble into some incredible things that are not actually what you heard.
Well, yes.
But similar.
Yes. Yeah.
So you come up with a new sticking, a new orchestration, or a new way to do something. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say take something from Wilcoxon and put it on the kit. It's like, well, you could do it this way, or I could do it this other way.
Mm-hmm.
And it produces almost the same effect.
Yeah.
But I've now changed how I think about it, which is going to change how I think about the next thing I play.
Uh-huh. Yeah, totally. I was just working on something from, I think, an alternate take of Two Bass Hit. I can't remember what recording.
Maybe Roundabout Midnight.
Yes. There's an alternate take on that. There was a phrase that I really loved, and so I wanted to learn it. So I started poking away at it myself, and then I looked at the Philly Joe transcription book, to get a kind of a hint about the sticking, and it just didn't work for me. It just didn't feel good in my hands. I couldn't pull it off cleanly. And in the meantime, before looking at the book, I came up with a different way of playing it that just felt really good in my hands. And of course, now that's just something that's starting to come out in my playing because it was unique to me and how I felt it.
Yeah.
It's always really interesting and rewarding to learn like that.
To me, that's also part of, if you want to learn how to speak a language, you have to speak it in your way. You speak a certain way.
Yes.
And the way that your vocabulary built, you might use other people's words, but you need to pronounce them and articulate them the way that you do. You don't want a situation where you have a stock piece of language or a stock phrase or whatever, and you can only use it exactly the way that you've heard it in that one instance.
Yeah.
Because then it is this thing that is very minimally useful.
Like shoehorning in a big fancy word into a casual conversation.
Exactly. And when you actually don't understand the context of it, why it was said that way, how to say it in a different way.
Right.
To fit what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want to learn how to do that, then you have to take those pieces of language and you have to put them in different contexts and try to understand them in different ways. Mm-hmm. What happens if I put the accent here? What if I change the sticking of this, but try to get the same sound? All of those things are what's going to make you more fluid as a speaker.
Let's go back to the Blackwell conversation for a minute. There's something you said there about how you really liked him coming down off the ride cymbal and using the drums more. And I have one specific note here up on my screen that kind of relates to that. There's a tune on, I can't remember the name of the album by Chris McCarthy that you played on, but the tune is called No Breakfast. but I'll put a link in the show notes to that. You're kind of doing what you were talking about, what attracted you to Blackwell, playing all over the drums and cymbals. And I didn't actually isolate the drum part like I could with Moises or something, but I imagine I would just listen to the drum part and it's like the whole song could be a drum solo because it's just such an open, playful approach. But I'm curious, what was your concept on that tune, and was this discussed at all?
It definitely wasn't discussed. Chris is a very he hires people that he knows will interpret his music in a way that he's down for.
Okay.
Which is something he's just very good at, having to say the least amount of things to get what he wants. And a lot of times it is just by putting something in front of you that he knows that you will have something interesting to say on.
Okay.
With that tune, basically what I was thinking is that there's a lot of little miniature figures in it that are it's sort of in this way where it's like you can address them or you don't have to address them, but they're kind of always there. And so it in some ways is conducive to kind of going in and out of the traditional timekeeper role.
Sure.
In terms of the orchestrations, I don't know if I was thinking so deliberately about avoiding the cymbal, for instance.
Yeah, okay.
But I think that's also just the way that I tend to play. If I'm going to break up things, I tend to activate the drums a lot.
Yeah, okay.
I just like that sound.
Yeah, well, it's very, very successful when you do it. And that tune particularly really stood out to me. But I know you also play in a more traditional way as well. I've heard you on gigs, pull up different Smalls gigs or whatever, or on guitar player Cecil Alexander. I mean, he's a monster player too, of course, but it was really cool. I didn't realize that you played on his first record, so that was cool to hear. And that's a little more right down the middle kind of jazz playing, which is really great. Oh, and before I forget, what cymbals do you like to use? What are you drawn to, and what are you using lately?
Lately, I would say in the last few years, I'm much more just I don't actually care that much, and I'm a little bit all over the place with my cymbal usage. I kind of am swapping all the time.
Okay.
But for the past few years, I got some cymbals from Jesse Simpson when he was living in New York. And my rehearsal space used to be right next to his shop.
Oh, nice.
And so he made a few cymbals for me. I have a 22-inch ride from him that I've been using now for probably 6 years as my primary ride. But I travel a decent amount and I only take 20-inch cymbals on the road.
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah.
I don't take that cymbal out of New York.
Is that just so you can carry on?
Yes, for practical reasons.
Sure.
It's not a sound thing. But yeah, then I've just picked up various cymbals along the way. So I have a cymbal that I was playing for a while and still do from Ryan Hayden in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
I have a Zildjian custom shop mini bell ride that I've had for many years. I have Funch and also a cymbal by a friend named Trevor Rogers, who is he's just outside of Philly, but he works with Mangello, if you know Mangello.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's amazing how many boutique cymbal makers there are out there now. It used to be that, I'd just be on the hunt for, whatever Zildjian I was into at the time and whatever a good version of that is. But now it's just, there's so much.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I have an old A too that I play sometimes, but usually I use it the most when I'm playing in straight ahead. It's most appropriate in that context often.
Sure. So you mentioned that the cymbal maker was right next to your rehearsal space. Is that something you still have? Do you still have a place you can go practice?
Yes, it's not the same location. But yeah, I have a rehearsal space about a 10-minute walk from my apartment.
Oh, that's very convenient. Are you able to practice often?
I could go there every single day if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, but it's because I have a low volume setup in my apartment as well.
Oh, nice.
So I have a small kit with all mesh heads and the low volume cymbals, and I have pads here. So I can do some amount of practicing here, and then I can do other stuff there.
How do you find the low volume stuff? Do you feel like the practicing you do on that kit is different than the kind of practicing you would do on a quote unquote real kit?
Not different, just it's not sufficient to be the only thing to practice on. So I do have to touch real drums, but it's also like I'm working all the time. So even if I don't touch real drums while I'm practicing, I'm touching them on the gig.
That's true. That's true. What kind of stuff are you practicing lately?
These days, a lot of my practice is just focused around either dealing with music that I'm listening to
Mm,
and things that I'm hearing, which is a little bit informal. Like I'm just dissecting some things. Okay, I'm listening to this record. I like this thing that the drummer plays. Let me figure this out. Or I like the way that they're comping on this thing. Let me try to cop some of those things or just
mm,
play along because I like the feel. And then the other thing is prepping for whatever music that I'm being asked to play because my gig life is kind of all over the place.
yeah.
I play a lot of straight ahead stuff and just tunes gigs, but then I also play a lot of original music that is a lot of sheet music.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of complex music, whether it's your groups or Hannah Marks or whoever. A lot of modern music is pretty complicated, at least on paper.
It's just yeah, that's just the way people write music
Yeah.
these days.
I know. I know.
So I've been doing it so long at this point that
Sure.
it's not that much of a hurdle. Like it's pretty rare to be in a situation where the music will take me more than one practice session to sort of have a handle on.
Oh, nice.
But
Okay.
every once in a while it does, and then I have to kind of be aware of that and carve out space to make sure. But I mean, any given week, I might be playing two standards gigs and then two or three original music gigs. And the original music gigs might have, it might be a gig where I play this music one time ever, and
Right.
it's 12 12 tunes that I have to learn. It'll take some time. I'm lucky. I'm also a good reader. So I don't know if this is a good thing, but I can definitely get away with not having to look at most music if I don't have the time. It's kind of just like an essential lifesaver at this point. I wouldn't be able to do this many original music gigs without going crazy
Hmm.
if I couldn't kind of pick it up really quickly.
Okay, so I kind of want to jump back a little bit. You went to William Patterson, but then you mentioned that you got your master's degree at Manhattan School of Music,
Yes.
which is very interesting for somebody that was skeptical about college in the first place. So, what encouraged you to go to MSM and get your master's degree?
Well, I think there was some encouragement from some teachers who basically just said for practical reasons, like if you ever want to do anything more formal with your education, you kind of have to. The master's degree is almost like the starting point at this point,
I see.
which is kind of insane. But
Yeah, yeah.
so there was a very practical reason for it. But the other reason was it was just maybe a softer landing moving back into the city.
Mm,
And I knew I was going to move to the city after William Patterson. I only applied to like three schools for grad school. And I think I was pretty much thinking if none of them make sense financially, I just won't do it and then I'll just move to the city anyways. So it ended up making sense financially. I was lucky to get a good enough scholarship that it was like a cheap graduate education.
oh, nice.
And I spent 2 years with John Riley, which was great.
Oh,
So
excellent, excellent. Did you study with anybody else while you were at MSM?
not privately, but I spent a lot of time with Rogério Bocato as well because he's a great Brazilian percussionist and also drum set player, but he's a multi percussionist.
Were you studying percussion?
I wasn't studying percussion, but I took his Brazilian ensemble. I also took his Brazilian class, and then he taught two courses called Ritmica, which are basically like cross rhythm classes, like
Mm.
learning how to hear two things against each other.
Okay.
And it's very systematic in the way that you learn. You learn things as like two independent, simultaneous things. There's a book. I mean, there's like a famous book that teaches this method, and I took 2 semesters of that class. So
Oh, interesting. I don't know that book. Maybe you can send me a link after
yeah, I
this.
should. I'll have to look it up exactly. I can't remember the name of the book. It might just
Okay,
be called
okay.
Ritmica, but I'll have to look it up.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks. And then when you do that, I'll put the link in the show notes for that. Did you end up playing much Brazilian music or?
Not really. Brazilian music was kind of or has always been like something that I've loved in the background
Hmm.
or like in the side. So like it comes up. I play on gigs where I'm asked to play something, but it's never been like a real aspiration or I'm
Okay.
not playing with Brazilian bands or anything like that.
Sure, but very useful to practice, and everything
Definitely.
is cumulative anyway. So,
Definitely. And also, I will say one thing I did when I was like 19, 20. I was practicing a lot of Brazilian music,
hmm.
especially because I was just trying to get my right hand sturdier and faster.
Ah,
And if you're playing all the 16th notes on the hi-hat at any tempo above 120, like
mm-hmm.
it gets hard.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a lefty. So
You
my
are?
right hand, I'm left-handed, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I would have never guessed that.
So yeah, that really helped my just like getting my right hand a step up from what it was.
How did that work out with you being left-handed but playing a kit set up for a right-handed player?
Well, when I was really young, my dad was the one who got me started. He's also a lefty.
Okay.
Um, and when he played in that band, I think when he was a kid, he didn't know any better. And
Yeah.
the kit was set up. It was like probably at a friend's house or something. It was just set up that way. So he just sat down and played it that way, but he played with his left hand lead. So open handed.
Oh, sure, sure.
And that's how I started playing.
Oh, okay.
So I played left hand lead on the hi hat and on the ride cymbal, but on a
Ah.
right hand standard setup.
So, like when you learned Tom Sawyer, for example, was that left hand on the hi-hat?
Left hand on the hi hat.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
And then it wasn't until then at some point I learned how to lead with my right hand as well. I started kind of messing with both. And then when I started playing jazz more and I switched to traditional grip, I kind of just made the decision to basically be like, okay, I'm not doing the left hand lead thing anymore.
Hmm.
I'm going to kind of fully commit to this other thing.
That's interesting because I noticed during that solo I was talking about on the tune Cherry, I noticed you did something around the toms and when you were on the floor tom, where most right-handed drummers would come up and hit the cymbal with their right hand, you did with your left hand. And I mean, that moment stood out to me last night. So it's interesting that this came up. I was thinking like, oh, that was just because your technique is so fluid, and it is. You know, I'm not saying that it's. I'm not saying that it's not, but it makes a lot of sense now, knowing that you're like ambidextrous now.
Yeah, to some degree. I probably wouldn't feel as comfortable actually riding with my left hand at this
Oh,
point.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, one thing about being lefty is that I did spend a lot of time just playing things left hand lead.
Uh huh.
So I am pretty comfortable, like, and this is also something that I used to do a lot with rudimental stuff, is like I would actually play things in reverse.
Ah,
So if you play through any of these like rudimental solo pieces with reverse sticking, it tends to be right hand dominant a lot of it. So
yeah, right.
it'll feel pretty different to have your left hand be the starting point of almost every phrase.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then also just orchestrationally, I think for right-handed people, it can be a little bit harder to play up the drums,
Uh huh.
like
Sure.
left-hand lead up the drums.
Yep.
And because I'm lefty, that was always pretty easy. But the opposite was harder.
Yeah, wow, this is so interesting. So before I move on, I have a couple other topics, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. When did you decide that you wanted to study with Dan Weiss, and how did that go? What did you work on with him?
I decided to study with him partially because at that time, my first 2 years at William Patterson, I studied with drummers. And then I decided to study with a piano player as my private teacher after that because I wanted to basically spend more time playing with someone, getting feedback from a non-drummer,
Oh, so you were
especially
studying with a piano player, but playing drums with the piano player?
exactly. So I would
Oh,
have a
okay.
bass player come in a lot of times to my lessons and we would play and I would get feedback from him.
Ah,
So
very
at one
smart.
point, it was a great pianist named Armin Danelian who was still there. And then Aaron Goldberg was there for
Oh,
a year, I think. And I was his private student for a year, or for, yeah, I think for a whole year.
oh, wow.
Um, so
Do you remember some of that feedback from the piano players?
yeah, it's very different feedback than you would get from a drummer. I mean, just things about like, hey, that thing you played there, you're like interrupting my phrase. Like,
Mm,
you need to hear how the thing that you're playing affects what I'm playing, my ability to finish my idea, or things like that. Getting feedback from how the things that you're playing actually affect somebody else, not just does it sound good as a drum thing.
oh, and yeah, interesting, interesting. Gosh, that's what gave you the idea to do that?
Honestly, I think some of it was, and I don't mean this is not to disparage my great teachers, but I think a lot of it was that I was studying with Bill Goodwin, who is like a mentor and an amazing drummer, still an amazing drummer. But his lessons were very like informal and a lot of more like stories or just like him. I'd get him to sit down and I would videotape him playing something. And I think at that time I was really going hard, like trying to learn. And I wanted someone to kind of just like kick my ass.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I decided that I thought the best way to do that was to study with someone who wasn't a drummer and have this experience. Because I think I also needed more of that at the time. I didn't need as much like foundational drum stuff. I needed foundational music stuff, like time playing, how to get my ride cymbal to feel better or how to accompany someone properly. Like, don't resolve every 8 bars. If they're continuing their phrase and I just hit the and a 4 and I just destroyed their ability to continue their idea. Things like that.
Yeah, gosh, that's so valuable. That's awesome. So was it after that then where you decided you wanted to go back and study some drums? And
so I think it was it was sort of like as I was finishing up with Bill, I was looking for a teacher, and because I wasn't going to study with a drummer at the school, I was looking outside the school, and Dan was somebody who I'd been seeing and been listening to a ton at that time. This would have been like when I was a sophomore, maybe. I'd been listening back to when I was like 18. I saw him play at Cornelia Street. Yeah, I just got really into his playing. There were a couple of records that I was listening to a lot. And he seemed like the right kind of teacher when I went to him as well, because he's super nerdy. He's really he's very committed to practicing and routine. And he also just likes practicing things for the sake of it.
Yes.
Which was something that I've always been into as well. Like, even if there's not necessarily a direct musical application in front of me, I'm just practicing things that make me feel like I have more things at my disposal in musical context.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to make them musical.
What did you work on with him then?
A bunch of things. But one thing I remember working on with him quite a bit is just like orchestrations, which is one of my favorite things about his playing. Is he seemingly has more available shapes to play around the drums than almost any other drummer I could think of.
Yeah.
Like, the connections between each surface are seemingly unlimited. Like, if he's hearing the floor tom in the middle of this thing, he has access to that. He doesn't have to play like a stock sticking and have this thing in order to get himself there, to like prepare himself to connect these things. It's just dealing with a lot of things like that. So he had these exercises where you play sort of like 2 opposing geometric shapes.
Yes.
And then he had exercises with things like Will Coxon, where he would say, okay, you're going to play this, but you're going to put all the right hand accents on the rack tom and all the left hand accents on the floor tom. So you end up with these crazy, like, crossing over, trying not to trip yourself up.
Yeah, there's a lot of great exercises. Have you checked out his online courses?
Like the video series,
the video
that he's put
courses that he has out now. Yeah, one of them covers a lot of that kind of stuff. It's and one of the exercises I worked through from that almost felt like learning how to juggle on the drums, because it was that sort of a lot of crossover stuff and trying not to get hung up.
I haven't watched those exact videos. I should, but
you probably got a lot of it. You got a lot of this information firsthand. Yeah,
definitely. He had me do exercises with sweeps. And it was nice, because then I would go listen to drummers or watch videos of certain drummers that I loved and realize that they were doing some of these things. Like, you watch a video of Al Foster taking a drum solo and you see how much he's sweeping across the drums and cymbals.
Oh, yeah.
And then you realize, like, wow, there are more ways to connect parts of the instrument than just picking the most, like, quote, efficient way.
Yeah, sure.
Because it just makes you think different. It's not about efficiency. It's about how does it help you deliver something.
Yeah. Have you ever seen his group Stair Baby? As a metal fan, you must love that too. And it's very nerdy.
I've seen them probably a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah, such a cool group. They actually came through Minneapolis a few years ago and played a small club.
Nice.
It was so great. So great. Okay, since we're kind of on the topic of practicing and working out, deficiencies, I noticed, and I was surprised to see that you had an article in Modern Drummer a few years ago.
I did,
Yeah.
yes. A probably little read article
Oh, yeah. I don't.
during COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I thought it was really cool, and it's challenging too. I keep a subscription to Modern Drummer just so I can check out stuff like this and research stuff as I hear about it and have access to the archives. Anyway, I printed it out, and it's very challenging to work through. On paper, it looked pretty simple, right? Like playing triplets and moving the bass drum through the permutations, groups of 4, groups of 5, and onward. It looks simple, but then I was like, oh, I'm going to work through this. It's really not simple
No.
at all. I was curious because you mentioned in the article that it was an exercise that you came up with to work on a deficiency in your playing. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what that deficiency was, and then how you take an exercise like the one in Modern Drummer, which is just almost very like a mechanical exercise. And is that just something you would practice for practice's sake that would just help kind of tune up your playing? Or were there things you did to take it beyond what was on the page to sort of fix whatever deficiency you found in your playing?
I'm struggling to recall exactly what the deficiency was that article addresses, but I can talk about it in general.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's fine. And I remember because I recently looked at it. I think you just had some discomfort when you were playing unison with different combinations of limbs. So this was an exercise for you to, help line up like right foot with left hand or left foot with right hand and that sort of thing.
I mean, I do this all the time. Like, this is sort of alluding to what I was talking about in how I practice, which is I sort of stumble into things either that catch my ear or are problems. Like, I went to go play something or heard something and it didn't quite come out the way that I thought it would. Or I tried to play something that I heard someone else play and it didn't work for me for some reason. And once I can pinpoint what that reason is, then I will isolate it and come up with sort of a way to deal with it. And I usually start with something very simple. So if it's like, okay, I'm having trouble with unison, well, what are the combinations of unison that I have? Can I move it through different rates with different combinations? Whether the hi-hat's on all 4 or on whatever, or if it's the top part is the smaller subdivision or the bottom part is the smaller subdivision or anything like that.
And is that something you end up doing a lot in terms of actually writing out exercises?
I don't typically write them out. That's a practical thing for for an article.
Sure.
But my exercises are, in some ways I am a very methodical person, but I'm actually not when it comes to like keeping track of these things. I just remember these things and I just do them. And then I'll tell someone else, my own students, if I show them exercises, sometimes I'll write it out for them.
Okay.
But I also just think it's better to learn it without looking at it if you can.
But since you just mentioned students, I do have a note here where I wanted to ask you about teaching. I'm curious how much you teach and what you find that students are coming to you for. Is it anything specific or?
There's a couple things that they come to me for, but I don't teach that much. I teach privately only. Like, I don't teach at a school or anything.
Right.
And the number of students at any given time varies. And I have quite a few just people who come like they want a one-off lesson or they want to come once every month or once every 2 weeks. And then I have a few, more regular students, some that might stay with me for a year, some that have been with me for, I guess my one student's been with me for like 5 years. But
this is all in person usually, or?
I teach on Zoom as well.
Okay.
But mostly, I mean, in person is just better if you can do it.
Right.
But Zoom is also fine. Yeah, I do have a lot of people coming to me because they want to get their hands together. That's happened quite a few times, like people who mostly want to play the snare drum. So yeah.
And does that end up with like we're running through Wilcoxon with them and some of
It really depends on what the problem is. Sometimes it's like more fundamental than that. Like I'm actually working on more mechanical things, just like getting them to strike the drum a certain way or try to change their grip ever so slightly. And then, maybe it's Wilcoxon, maybe it's master studies, maybe it's stick control. I do a lot of stuff in syncopation. I think syncopation is a great book because it kind of facilitates the type of practice that I prefer, which is changing the context
Ah,
of what it is that you're working on. So like you could take any phrase from Wilcoxon that you like, take one beat or whatever, or one sticking, and come up with a way to use stick control to express that sticking a million
mm,
different ways.
yeah, sure.
So I do that all the time with my students. People have basic deficiencies with things like they can play a paradiddle, they can play a
Hmm.
double paradiddle, they can play a paradiddle diddle, but they have no idea how to actually string any of these things together organically. And you can come up with an exercise in 2 seconds that says,
Right.
okay, eighth notes are going to be a paradiddle, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever, and
Yeah.
quarter notes are going to be this. And then they're just immediately forced to deal with all these changing things.
I'm curious, now that you have some experience teaching and you have so much time as a student, do you have anything that you wished that you focused more on when you were young
Yes.
or less on?
Yeah. I mean, this might sound, I'm going to have to articulate why, but I think the thing that I spent too much time thinking about and focusing on was like my thing. I don't know how to explain that. Like putting too much emphasis on finding my voice or something too early
Mm,
before I really had a concept of what that even meant
mm,
in the context of music. I think some of it is the fault of that teachers have tend to say this to students a lot when they're young, like this is jazz music, it's improvise, it's a lot of improvising. You have to find your stamp or your signature on it. And part of me, the older I get, just thinks that there's something fundamentally off about that way of learning. It's like that's not actually the way that you learn to play the music and have your own voice. Your voice is just going to be a byproduct of the things that you're attracted to and that you spend time working on. And it's going to, if you're interested in enough different things, you're going to end up with a different result. Your sensibilities will carry through all that. You don't have to like overly think about and try to manufacture your thing or like your
yeah,
voice.
right.
And I also think you don't want to be talking about it before you have your fundamentals together. I've told this to students of mine, and it's something I wish I was more aware of, that I just wasn't really hung up on that thing. Like
Mm,
feeling like I had to discover a new approach or like a new thing or try to manufacture my own things. Like it will come as part of this process.
do you remember what that was like as you were trying to do that?
Well, I think some of it was like actively wanting to avoid things that I shouldn't have been avoiding just because I thought it was like, that's too obvious or too, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I don't want to spend too much time working on this Art Blakey thing or like working on this Philly Joe Jones thing because everybody plays that
Mm,
when they're
mm,
playing this music. I want to play
uh-huh.
this other thing. It's like instead of learning it and then deciding not to play it, I was just like wholesale deciding not to play it in advance.
Ah, I see.
And I grew out of that and slowly, and also I just liked it. So I did it anyways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a little too much emphasis on that component of it. Like the finding your own voice part is important, but that's just not how you actually find your own voice. You find your own voice by doing the thing, not by trying to think about it or manufacture a voice for yourself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes me think about, even like social media personas. Some are authentic and some are manufactured. And
A
the ones
100%.
that are manufactured, they stick out like a sore thumb.
You feel it right away. And you can feel it when someone plays and it's a put on, you know. You're like, this is not what you do. Why are you like, I want to hear you. I don't
Uh-huh.
want to hear the thing that you wish you were.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I want to touch on a couple more things. One is something I haven't been able to stop wondering about since you posted it on Instagram quite a while ago. You did sort of a Q&A thing in your Instagram story, and somebody asked you what your favorite drum is, and you said the bass drum. And I don't think you gave any explanation. There were some other questions, about playing on vamps and stuff, where you gave very detailed information. That was very cool, by the way. And I'll put some of that in the show notes too, so folks can go find that. But I'm curious, why the bass drum?
Hmm. I think in some ways that was a response that's also just it's aware that the bass drum to some degree is like a neglected drum
Mm.
in contemporary jazz. It's like such a foundational part of the sound of jazz drumming. And now I feel like it's kind of auxiliary to the fundamental way that most people play.
And do you mean because like feathering isn't
That's
as
one part of it.
common?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
one part of it. It's no longer like a timekeeper in the way that it used to be. But even in the way that even when you hear, for instance, a lot of straight ahead playing, modern straight ahead playing, you don't hear the bass drum being used as a fundamental component to the same degree as you would in a lot of these old recordings. Like just earlier this morning, I was listening to this, I can't remember the name of the record, Barry Harris record with Clifford Jarvis on drums. And he is dropping bombs on the bass drum constantly.
Mm.
And it's this thing that I was listening to, and I was just thinking, like, if I heard a straight ahead drummer in New York do this right now, it'd actually be kind of shocking.
Yeah.
Like, this is just not the way that people relate to this instrument anymore. I feel like the bass drum right now tends to be just like a point of emphasis or a fill-in. So it's like something that fills in the gap between something with your hands, or it's like to emphasize a crash versus having it's like an independent sense of identity that is underneath, whether it's keeping time or it's part of the comping conversation. But it makes me think, when I hear older, I love Joe Jones. When you listen to Joe Jones play with brushes, listen to how much he's comping with his feet. His bass drum and his hi-hat are doing more of the comping than his hands most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't hear that so much, in a contemporary context.
Another thing I was wondering about, well, you're on this recording by percussionist marimba player Peyton McDonald.
Yeah.
Like Explorations 20, it's called. And I haven't dug into his whole career, but it seems like he has an incredible catalog of explorations, one through who knows. Right. And I saw that you played on one, and in the liner notes for that, he mentioned something about you playing tabla.
Yeah.
Is that something you still do, or you got into for a short time?
So I don't still do it, but it wasn't a short time. It was like 6 years.
Oh,
that I
really?
Played. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, he was my first tabla teacher because he played tabla for like a decade way back and then stopped. And now he focuses on Western percussion, but he still plays Indian classical music as a vocalist.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he sings. But he's just noticed that I was interested in a lot of stuff because I did stuff with the percussion ensembles when I was at William Patterson because I was also into like chamber music and contemporary classical music and stuff like that. So I would do guest features on drum set with the percussion ensembles. And he got me into thinking about, I was listening to some Indian classical music, and he was just like, well, if you're interested, why don't we sit down and check it out? I bought like a set, and they weren't that expensive.
Yeah.
And I started studying with him. I took a lesson a week, but I got really into it. I mean, I was doing it from probably my sophomore year of college until 2021 or something like that.
Oh, wow. Wow.
After I was out of grad school.
Was that something you also touched on with Dan? Because Dan Weiss is an incredible tabla player as well, and he adapts it to the drum set.
We did work on some of his drum set adaptations because I was already playing, but I studied with Dan's teacher, Samir Chatterjee.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
So that was my teacher as well.
Wow.
But Dan, I was taking drum lessons with him, and we worked on some of his drum set adaptations of tabla compositions.
Yeah, I worked on some of that stuff during the pandemic, and it was really fun at first, but after a while, it kind of got to be like just trying to beat a hard video game just for the sake of it. And I kind of lost sight of why I was doing it in the first place.
I will say that was the thing. If you play tabla, the good thing about those, they're hard to play on drum set, but luckily I'd been playing drum set for a long time. But then having played tabla for a few years, it made what I was looking at make structural sense.
I see. Yeah.
So like the compositions then started to make sense. So then it was just as long as I could technically do it, it was just a matter of trying to be fluent with it and connect them and come up with my own variations and
sure.
Things like that. And I came up with some of my own orchestrations at the time. I was so into it that I like started coming up with my own orchestrations of compositions in the vein of Dan, just as exercises for myself.
Do you find any of that coming out in your playing now, or in ways that you feel it really helped your playing?
Yeah, in some ways it aided with one of the things that I'm really into about Ed Blackwell's playing, which is this like vertical layering, which I first got into because of Ed, but then
Yeah.
hearing Dan do some of that stuff with tabla compositions led to a deeper understanding of other ways to do it. Because he's
Yeah.
not quite doing it in the way that Ed is doing it, but he is doing the same thing where he has like the hands and the feet layered in all these different ways and orchestrated across the kit. And I play that way, I will say, like a lot of the time. Like when I take solos, those are the kinds of ideas that I tend to hear. I mean, I hear language too and whatever, but a lot of times the language ends up coming out in that way where I'm like
Mm.
layering things I'm doing with my hands and feet simultaneously. I
Uh-huh.
just like that vertical conversation.
Well, yeah, and it can be incredibly effective, and just as a listener too, it almost has like a primal impact, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And since we were touching on Blackwell again, in addition to the Ornette record that you got into, what are a few of your favorite Blackwell records?
There's a lot, but This Is Our Music is the one that that was my first exposure to him and still my favorite probably record that he plays on.
Mm-hmm.
But some others are two of the Blue Note records that Don Cherry put out. One is called Complete Communion, and the other
Yep.
one is Symphony for Improvisers.
Right. Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
of Ed's best playing on record, I think.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a Wilbur Ware record from the late 60s that was released later, I think, but I think it was recorded in like 68 or something, that has Clifford Jordan and Don Cherry. It's called Super Bass.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And Ed and Wilbur Ware have a really incredible hookup. And Ed sounds amazing on that record. There's some others too. There's another Don Cherry record called Where's Brooklyn from around the same time
Oh, yeah,
as
yeah,
those
yeah,
other
yeah.
ones. And then there's duo records with him. El Corazon is one.
Yeah.
And there's a live record with Dewey Redman called In Villassau.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I think the
Um,
first couple that I heard other than the Ornette stuff, Old and New Dreams playing that live album, that one is just burned into my brain because I think I heard it when I was 16, 17, and it was pre-streaming, so I had that CD and that was about it for a month until I could
yeah.
afford the next one. And then the Lovano recordings, Sounds
Oh,
of
yeah.
Joy,
From the
and
Soul.
yeah, From the Soul. Yeah, there's something about Sounds of Joy for me that's just like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to hear Ed later, too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really also, my freshman year of college, I remember a friend of mine and me were both really into the Live at the Five spot, Eric
Oh,
Dolphy, Booker Little records.
oh, right, right.
Ed plays amazing on that and kind of weird. It's kind of a weird record. Like, him and Richard Davis and Mal Waldron are a pretty interesting rhythm section
Mm-hmm.
and things get kind of loose and whatever. But I really love how creative he is as an accompanist on some of those tracks, especially on the waltzes, which feel really earthy and greasy, but they get weird and he displaces things and leaves the cymbal for all these excursions while he's playing behind people, but it never stops feeling a certain way, which is what I love about it.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, we should start wrapping up. And since we're talking about records, I figured it's a good time to ask the question I'm trying to fit in with every guest. Can you give me one or two or three of the albums you think maybe you've listened to most in your lifetime? And I always tell people it doesn't have to be cool. It doesn't even have to be jazz. I'm just curious what comes to mind.
I'll probably just stick with jazz only for narrowing purposes. Otherwise,
Sure.
this would
Yeah,
be
yeah. I gotcha.
very difficult. Well, one of them I already mentioned, which is Ornette's "This Is Our Music."
Right,
That's
right.
like it's my favorite Ornette Coleman record to this day, and it's one of my favorite records of Blackwell. I guess I'm going to go with recency bias on this and just focus on some things that I'm still really into
Okay.
that I've been into. Another record is the Jackie Byard record called "Last from Lenny's." It's a
Mm.
live recording with Joe Farrell, George Tucker, and Alan Dawson. And that record I got into, I think I first heard it maybe like maybe like 6 years ago, something like that. And it's never left my rotation since. It kind of encapsulates so many things that I love about the music. It's incredibly swinging, it's fun, but it's also weird. It goes pretty out, but it's got contemporary stuff. It's got some old timey stuff on it. It's got just a little bit of everything.
Oh, awesome. I've never heard that one, so I'm going to go check that out today.
It's a great record. And then the last one is probably a live Charlie Parker record called One Night in Birdland. It's from 1950, and it's sort of just like the perfect live bebop record. The band is stacked. It's Curly Russell, Art Blakey, Fats Navarro, and Bud Powell, and Charlie Parker. It's an incredible record. There's probably like 15 or 20 tracks on it, something like that. Yeah, it's just an incredible band playing at the absolute peak of their powers. And the only thing that's not great about it is the fidelity.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I guess one last thing, if for the people that are still listening at this point, this it's going to be for extreme drum nerds, and I want to just put it out there that you turned me on to the fact that Andrew Cyril has an instructional video of some kind that was put out in the 80s or 90s on VHS only, and it's very difficult to find. So if anybody out there has it, please reach out to one of us. And
well, or if anyone in the industry can convince whatever the publishing company was to reproduce it.
Yeah, right.
Put it back in distribution, that would be even better.
Well, before we go, where's the best place for people to follow you and keep up with what you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best place to follow me is usually Instagram.
Yeah, you're pretty active there.
Yeah, I'm relatively active there. I'm not always the best at posting everything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But if someone's that interested, they can absolutely send me a direct message and I will let them know where I'm playing. I'm really bad at keeping my website up to date. Like, my website has not been updated in probably well over a year.
Oh, like, yeah.
It's probably been 2 years even.
Yeah. Those get ignored a lot more these days.
Yeah, not good about that. But yeah, I mean, if you're in New York, I'm playing in New York all the time. And then I tour too, but I'm still in New York most of the year.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll link to your website and Instagram in the show notes. And with that, I'll just say thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a good time.
All right, thanks. All right, thanks for listening. If you like the show, please subscribe on your platform of choice and share it with a friend. You can find the show and a blog at practicingdrummer.com or on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as Practicing Drummer.